Today has been a long time coming. We are going to talk a lot about Kaylee's research that she's been doing with Resonant Astrology, a lot of her thoughts about the masculine and the feminine, and some asteroids that we haven't truly explored yet. So we are super excited. We're doing all of this because it was her birthday back in February, and we missed it, and we didn't even get to do anything for it. And so this belated birthday episode has been in our hearts, our minds for a long time. And so finally today we get to hear about all the things. So I'm so excited.
Welcome to the Feminine Alchemy podcast, where we explore the truth about the feminine, the peaceful, the wild, and the visceral. I'm your host, J.N. Behringer, joined by my co-hosts, Julie Dean Richards and Kayelee Rose. Each week, we explore the deep mysteries of the feminine and help listeners apply them to their daily lives in a practical way. Join us to unlock the hidden wisdoms your soul has been waiting for.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Feminine Alchemy. I am Julie Dean Richards, and today we have a very special episode with our very special guest, who is actually our co-host, Kayelee Rose. Kayelee, say hello.
Hello, everyone.
Kayelee, I think we should start off with a special story, an experience that you had during your hospitalization that will lead into a lot of what we're talking about. So should we start there?
Yeah, let's do it. And honestly, I think the timing is perfect. Like, my birthday episode needed to wait this long because so much has happened in the last couple of months. But to backtrack back to what you just said, when I was hospitalized for a week, for anyone who hasn't heard anything about that, I was hospitalized for a week after my baby was born with extensive blood clots. And while I was between thrombectomies, so between procedures, a friend was working on me energetically from afar. He was in Arizona and I was in Utah, and he was talking to me on the phone while he was working on me, and he asked me a question that really stopped me in my tracks. He said, "Does it feel like you've done what you came here to do?" And he wasn't meaning like, did you do what you came here to do at the hospital? He meant like, have you done what you came here to do in this life, in this existence, in this experience on this planet? And I thought for sure the answer would be, nope, I got a lot left to do. Because, I mean, logically, I do. I have a lot left to do. Little kids to raise, older kids to raise, fun projects, things that I'm so excited about. And I sat with that question, and it just came very clearly, like, yes, yeah, I did what I came here to do. And that threw me off a little bit, especially as someone who earlier on in my life, I experienced suicidality. And so it felt weirdly bittersweet to hear myself say, yeah, I did what I came here to do. And then to realize, like, previously in my life, having that confirmation would have been dangerous. It wouldn't have been good for me to realize, oh, I did what I came here to do. And it was really interesting because realizing that, it took a lot of pressure off of me that I didn't realize I had been experiencing. Because I've been working on Resonant Astrology. I've been working on so many projects. I've been wanting so badly to raise my kids in a particular way and give them certain tools that maybe I didn't have. And to have that realization of like, I've actually accomplished what I came here to do. It then freed me from having to meet any deadlines or any requirements that I had manufactured for myself. And to listen instead to, like, what's the real timing on this? What's the divine timing on this? What's the timing that makes sense for my body and for my spirit in this moment? And the reason I start with this story is that since then, so many amazing things have happened, especially related to resonant astrology. And I've been thinking, well, if I already did what I came here to do, what is this about? I mean, obviously we have choice. We can choose to do more, and I'm obviously still here, so there must be something more for me to do. And I was sitting with that this morning. I was actually thinking about it while I was showering, which is where some of my best thinking happens, is in the shower or in the bathtub, and just really feeling into it and realizing, like, I have already done what I came here to do that I had consciously decided I would be doing. But I'm not done with the things that are in this next chapter of my life. And I thought about that and realized, oh, my nodal return is coming up. When the nodes shift into North Node in Aquarius and South Node in Leo, I'll experience my nodal return. And it's like looking at my whole life and my life path and what have I accomplished? What have I not accomplished? What have I become? What have I let go of? Just that whole life path question. And so it feels really poignant to be sitting with that question today of, have I done what I came here to do? And realize that, yeah, it is true that I've done what I came here to do. And it's also not true because there is more that I came here to do. And to be able to sit in that paradox of like, hey, if I actually did die in that hospital, I would have accomplished what I came here to do. And for whatever reason, I did not die in that hospital. And I'm still here and I'm still consciously choosing to be here because it feels like there is more that I want to experience and more that I want to be a part of in my children's lives, in my husband's life, in my friends' lives, in my own life, and in what's coming forward in Resonant Astrology. And it just felt important to start there because choice is so important. Absolutely. And I feel like I'm here at this point in time because this is the only point in time I could do the work that I am doing. Men and women who came before me had to lay some groundwork for me to be able to do what I'm doing here and now. And I'm setting groundwork for my children, especially for them to do things that I can't do or haven't been able to do. So that's where this is all opening up, is this gratitude for the shoulders that I'm standing on that have made the work I'm doing possible, while also recognizing like, oh my gosh, I'm still here because the work that I'm doing really does matter and it's really needed right now.
That is so beautiful. I love this story, and I have like a very vivid image of what this whole encounter with our friend, what it was like and what unfolded. But I love the beauty of that yes, you're here for what you consciously came to do. And I think a lot of people fit that ticket. Like we consciously had a few things that we were here to do, but the unconscious, the more that you could do, the timing is so right. The divine timing. There are more divine things that you have left to do. And I think that's true of everybody. If you open up in this time frame that you're in, there's so much more that can come through you if you allow yourself to be a vessel, which is what you've described yourself as for this form of astrology, for the things that are coming through, that you're a vessel, that it's coming through you. I love to see more and more how this unfolds for you. And I think you're exactly right. You're in the exact right time for this. So in your research, coming from that perspective of like, okay, all this ground has been laid and astrology is ever evolving as our consciousness evolves. We talk about this a lot, but for people who are unfamiliar, the belief, or at least here at Feminine Alchemy, what we believe is that as the consciousness of the planet evolves, as people open their ideas and their minds to new things, then new things unfold in astrology that we can apply to the here and now because we're ready for it. So we believe that planets and things that are discovered at this time for a purpose, and we apply them from the time that they're discovered because we're ready for that. That's what's unfolding now. So what Kaylee's bringing forth is exactly right for this time and this age. So everybody buckle up because this is for you. This is exactly for you. So Kayelee, let's start talking about what's been alive for you recently. And a lot of that you've talked about is the interplay between the masculine and the feminine. Do you want to start there? We can unfold.
Yes, definitely. Just a little backstory if there's anyone listening in who hasn't listened to some of our previous episodes covering this. Resonant astrology is the astrological system that I've developed that centers feminine energy, because astrology in a lot of ways, at least Western astrology, has been very masculine energy coded. It's been masculine archetypes primarily, and the feminine encapsulated in like the moon and Venus. And then some people talk about asteroid goddesses, but they're not that important to most people's perspective. I have flipped the script on that, not from a space of, oh, we don't care about the masculine, but from a space of, hey, let's make room at the table for the masculine and the feminine together. And hey, let's forget the table altogether and let's dance. That's what Resonant Astrology is about. And my work up to now has largely focused on, okay, let's bring feminine archetypes to the table. Let's put asteroid goddesses in positions of rulership. Let's really lean into what I call the feminine power line, which is Black Moon Lilith and Eve Point, that reclamation of feminine power, that reclamation of feminine energy in the individual especially, but in society as well. And more recently, just especially the last maybe 3 months, it's been weighing on, I don't even know if weighing on is quite the right phrasing, but it's been sitting in my heart and in my mind, just this idea of like, okay, like I've in so many ways rebalanced that masculine and feminine energy dynamic in astrology, but it feels like there's still something missing. And that's where a lot of my research starts, is in this place of something feels like it's missing or something feels like it's not quite right. And I started really thinking about, if there's a feminine power line, is there a masculine power line? And what does that look like? So I did some digging and discovered that there is a small group, relatively small group of astrologers in the UK and that area who use a point called Priapus. So Priapus is the perigee of the moon. So it's the point in the moon's orbit that is closest to the Earth. And for the people who use Priapus, they think of it as, in some ways, as like excess, like it's lunar energy and wanting and longing and grasping and taking. And if you look at the mythology of Priapus, that's pretty fitting. Priapus is a minor, quote unquote, minor deity in Greek and Roman myth. And he was essentially a male fertility deity who was relegated to just being the protector of the garden. And he was cursed with an excessively large, basically useless penis. Like constant erection, couldn't actually use it for its real purpose. And he would try to take advantage of nymphs. And in some myths, he even attempted to take advantage of Vesta, take advantage being a euphemism for sexual assault. So there's a lot of heavy stuff associated with Priapus and this sense of longing. And the fascinating thing about Priapus is that in various myths, he has different fathers. Like some sources say Dionysus, some say Hermes, some say I think Zeus, but always his mother is the same. Which, I mean, that's kind of how things work. You always know who someone's mother is because she's pregnant, she gives birth. You don't always know who their father is. And so there's that little mirroring of reality right there. But his mother was Aphrodite, was Venus. His mother was love. And then when he was born, his mother rejected him. Because he was, in a lot of the versions of the myth, he was cursed by Hera to have this excessively large penis and was grotesque and was unrefined. So his mother, love herself, rejected him. And all of this mythology feels so poignant when we look at masculine wounding. And so I thought, okay, we've got this point that has to do with masculine wounding. And in my work, there's no such thing as just things in shadow. There's always gold in the shadow. There's always the trait in its repressed form or its damaged form or its disempowered form. And there's the trait in its integrated form. So I look at Priapus and I don't think, oh, it's just excessive lustiness and it's generative power, male generative power. It's longing for love and connection, which is not a bad thing. So that was the starting point of maybe that could be a masculine power line. Maybe that could be part of it. And if I have Eve point as the opposing point of Black Moon Lilith, it would make sense to call the opposing point of Priapus the Adam point. And so I got there and was like, okay, this is a theory. This may have no grounding whatsoever in astronomy, astrology, or people's lived experience. So I went digging some more and started researching mythology around Priapus, around Adam, looking at different faith traditions and how they interpret Adam. And I started looking at different ways to calculate Black Moon Lilith and Priapus. And I came to this point of I'm looking at all this research about male psychology. I'm thinking about male wounding, and I'm looking at these points that have to do with masculine energy and masculine wounding, and like, what does it look like when the masculine isn't wounded? And I'm a woman. I don't know what it's like to be a man. I can imagine, but that's not lived experience. That's my imagination and assumptions that I am making because I don't know. And so I turned to my husband, who is my best friend and the person that usually hears about my research first. And he was like, this is really cool. I mean, that wasn't his exact wording, but he was really interested. And so there was one day I remember just having this discussion with him and saying, so I felt for a long time that for women, the key to them reclaiming their feminine energy in a lot of ways is allowing themselves to experience rage. And I think that for men, what they need is to experience their grief. And so we started this conversation and I was saying like, yeah, for men, they've largely been conditioned to only experience rage or anger as an emotion. And he was like, no, that's not true. I was like, well, okay, I want to hear this because you're a man and I'm not. And he was like, no, I at least was conditioned to not have emotion at all. That even my rage was suspect. My anger was suspect because if I was angry, maybe I was going to hurt somebody. And he just brought up like growing up as a little boy and as a teenager and even now as a man, the message is you're not allowed to feel and you need to be useful or you're worthless. That breaks my heart because, oh my gosh, to live like that, the burden that you would have to carry in order to live like that is astronomical. Not literally, but it's huge. And as I considered that, Priapus and Adam as archetypes started to make more and more sense for masculine wounding. And it made me think about circumcision, actually. And I'm not here to say you should circumcise, you should not circumcise. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying about circumcision is that it is a procedure that is an elective procedure done on babies, usually, not always on babies, but usually on male babies before they can actually consciously consent. And what's removed is a highly sensitive part of their body that has tons of nerve endings. And there have been studies done that actually show there is a neurological change. The brain changes because of circumcision, because of the pain and the trauma of circumcision. We have this physical example of what I think of as the masculine wound. But what I have been drawn to that affects all men, even men who are intact, who have not been circumcised, is this concept of emotional circumcision. I think the masculine wound is men being told for generations that they're not allowed to feel, to cut off the emotions, cut off the inner world, live only in the external world, be useful, be physically powerful. Don't be emotional. Don't show what's going on in your internal world and your intuition. No, just be productive. And when I look at Priapus and Adam as archetypes, it fits. It fits that wounding. It fits even when you look at Adam as in a sense of like, oh, like he abdicated responsibility. He just followed Eve. And he just did his thing, like the apathy that shows up in a lot of men because they feel like they have no place in the world. That really relates to a way that Adam can express as an archetype. And Priapus, that reaching, grasping, like I need to grasp at the feminine. That's a way that the masculine shows up in a wounded capacity. And if we look at the world, hello, like we see so many men who are showing up as disconnected from their emotions, disconnected from their bodies in a lot of ways. And they are trying to use up the feminine in their lives, or they're apathetic. So this felt like a huge deal to me. Like, okay, we've got these points that relate to this masculine wounding. Now, how do these points express when they're integrated? How do these points express when the wound is healed, or when the wound is acknowledged and allowed to exist without it meaning anything about the person who holds the wound? And so I started looking at these archetypes, and it's like, okay, well, Priapus was also like the protector of gardens. He was the protector of generative force. And that's a big deal. And I see that in the men in my life who are functioning from a space of wholeness, even if they aren't whole all the time. In their moments of wholeness, there is this protective element, this generative element. And Adam, as an archetype, he's in biblical writings, he named things and he connected with God in this priestly way. And if we take religion out of the equation and we just look at, okay, Adam was a conduit to the divine and was connected to the details of naming things, we start to get this picture of like, okay, how can healed integrated masculine energy show up? But it was just a theory on my part. Like, I was just theorizing and looking at archetypes, which is important, which matters. That's valid. Archetypes are a real thing. They really do show up in our psyches and in our collective psyches. But I realized there are only very few men in my life right now who feel safe enough with me to open up about the truth of their inner world and what their wounds actually are and what they're actually hoping for and what their lived experience is when they're vulnerable. And I realized I need to talk to more men about what they're actually experiencing. And most men are probably going to be a little hesitant to be that vulnerable. And it feels like this sacred space, walking into that vulnerability with a man. I've done that a lot with my husband because he's learned he can trust me. Lige knows he can trust me. And I've proven it to him over and over again that I can handle his inner world. And if I don't handle it perfectly, I'll learn and I'll grow and I'll change so that I can be a safe space for him, just like he's a safe space for me. And so I can talk to him about his wounding and his experiences, but I need to talk to more men in ways that make them feel safe enough to be vulnerable. So actually later today, I'm meeting with a woman who excels at that, who's extremely good at that. Her name's Rebecca Hamilton. We've talked to her on the podcast before. She works with men in this capacity and has a unique lived experience of working with men as a woman, seeing men for who they truly are and how they really are experiencing life. And so I'm going to talk to her about my research and talk to her about the possibility of being able to talk to her network of men who are in this work of masculine healing. So that's super, super exciting. Go ahead, Julie.
No, I am eating this up. I'm hanging on every word. I'm here for it. I'm right here. I'm listening. I'm all in. And I am so excited you're going to talk to Rebecca because she's amazing.
Yes.
It's just a perfect fit.
Yes.
Oh, it's the perfect fit. Because I've been like, where is she going? She seems like she has an answer. What's the answer? Where is it going to go? So I love that. And I could maybe volunteer. I mean, me and Jan might volunteer our husbands a little bit for this too. But I just love this concept of needing to look deeper. If we're going to look at the feminine and restore the feminine, we also need to understand this wounded masculine. How did we get here? Because that's really how we got here in many ways is we let the wounded masculine run rampant. And this is what has happened. So if we really want to get the core of it, of course, there's two parts. Restoring the feminine is a core part of it, but also healing the wounded masculine is the other part. And since the beginning of talking on the podcast, we've always talked about we're not anti-man. We're not anti-masculine. We are very much about balance because we both have experienced and heard many people in this space who are like, oh, the Y chromosome is just going to disappear and, men don't matter and they're just so terrible and the masculine is just so terrible. And we just don't believe in that. We believe in balance and bringing back balance. And we've talked about this a lot, trying to make the pendulum stop swinging and to bring it more into center. And so I love that a big part of your focus is coming together on these new points and actually bringing forth, okay, what are these masculine wounds? kind of finding the map back. How did we get here and how do we heal them? Because women have wounded masculine also
Yes.
inside of us. Yes.
And that's the thing about this, like the feminine power line exists in everyone's chart. Men need their feminine power line. And as I'm doing this work with the masculine power line, it's in women's charts too. It's significant. Like when our masculine is wounded, whether we're male or female, it really impacts how we show up in the world. And when our feminine energy is repressed or vilified, really, really impacts how we show up in the world. And both the masculine and the feminine impacts how we are on the inside, the world that we don't necessarily show other people very often or at all.
Completely agreed. Completely agreed. And I have been thinking as we've been talking, if you're listening to this and maybe you're feeling a little bit lost, but you're highly interested in what we're talking about, because in some ways these are very advanced astrological concepts that we're talking about. We can't help ourselves. We're really sorry about that.
Welcome to the fire hose edition.
Here it is. But if you are interested in learning a lot more about this, you can pause this podcast here and go back. We have several episodes that will bring you up to speed. We have a whole astrological foundations. A few of those, if you are not familiar with astrology at all, we have a whole series starting from the very beginning of astrology, if that's where you are. And then this past summer, we've done episodes on the asteroid goddesses. So you can find the episodes on the asteroid goddesses. You can find the episodes on astrology in general, starting from the beginning. And if you go all the way back to kind of the beginning of the podcast, Kaylee's last birthday episode is when we really introduced resonant astrology in general. So just know if this is feeling like a lot, there's lots of resources. And of course, Kayelee at the end is going to talk about her personal resources, how you can connect to her and her work if you want to participate and if you want to learn more and do sessions with her, because it's amazing. Okay, I'm so excited. All right, let's keep talking about this.
All right. So this masculine and feminine energy, this polarity work has felt crucial to me for at least the last decade of my life. And as things have intensified in the world around me, especially in the last year or so, it's just made it seem even more necessary for us to come to this space of, okay, yes, we need to acknowledge that there has been pain and there has been wounding, and we need to acknowledge that there has been repression. And we can't truly heal if we only bring home the feminine. The masculine, as it truly is, has been gone too. Both have been missing. And I feel so called to support whoever wants to engage with my work to come to this space of let's reclaim the masculine and let's reclaim the feminine and let's heal the masculine, because it has felt like a repression of the feminine and a wounding of the masculine. And when we look at it through this lens of astrology, it can get very personalized and point to blind spots that we don't always notice in ourselves when we're just looking at our psychology and how we show up in the world. And that's part of why I feel like astrology is such a vital part, and somatics, being connected to the body, is another vital part of healing this really fractured dynamic. And honestly, that's what this really is. It's a fracturing of masculine and feminine energy within ourselves, as well as fracturing parts of the feminine off and parts of the masculine off, and then compressing them down into caricatures of what they really are. And it's the caricatures that are causing the problems, not the traits themselves.
I think that is very, very true. And I think we have become very scared of some masculine traits that are really necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what Lige was saying, even if I'm angry, people are afraid. Both the feminine and the masculine need sacred rage. They need that outlet for themselves, and they need protective fire and the ability to protect. that is in many ways a big part of the masculine that I see when we talk about Priapus and him being the protector of the garden, the keeper of that. And a protector has many different roles. It's not just being angry and being hurtful. There are many, many different forms of protection and how we protect. But being able to use that masculine outward push to keep away threats, to keep away violence, to protect peace for other people is really important to be able to have that along with other emotions that the masculine might have. And I think we have forgotten, we have become just so afraid in many, many ways of emotion in general from wherever it may come. And I do think that sometimes there's this swing on both sides. There's this swing of, everything is emotion and logic is bad and we can only follow emotion, and the swing that there's no emotion, we can only follow logic. And logic is the only thing that matters. So we need to be able to find this balance and let go of our fear, because I think we are becoming afraid of the masculine because we're so used to the crony masculine, the masculine that is the false masculine. And that false masculine is very scary and very hurtful, but we really do need protectors. We really do need masculine traits that allow us to build and create and thrive in so many ways. And we're really missing that.
Yeah. Yeah, we really are. And for anyone who's listening, um, if you've listened for very long, you're probably fairly familiar with masculine and feminine energy. But if you're at all unfamiliar with how the dissonance between the disempowered versions of masculine and feminine energy are playing out here and now and have been playing out for centuries, a really awesome place to look is on Substack. There's a woman who I believe her name's pronounced Elaine Kalila. She wrote articles recently, one called Motherless and one called Fatherless. And she's got another one called Severed, The Power of Sacred Marriage. I haven't read that one yet, but the Motherless and Fatherless, as I read those, they were like clarion calls telling me, Kayelee, you are doing exactly the work you need to be doing here and now. And we need this. We absolutely need this, because she points out, like, we are motherless and fatherless. It's not just that we're motherless or just fatherless. We've been missing both in terms of what does the feminine, both the personal feminine and the divine feminine, actually look like and behave like? And what does the personal masculine and the divine masculine actually look like and feel like? Because we have been disconnected from them for a long time in a lot of ways. And a lot of us have been doing work to reconnect with both, but it feels like there's this tipping point of, okay, it's getting really real. Either you're doing this work or you're going to be put in a situation where you're going to have to do the work. And there's a lot of pain in the world because of people either not understanding what's happened or not knowing how to move forward in a way that is healthy and empowering. And so we'll drop the links to Motherless and Fatherless articles in the show notes, because they're must reads. They're so, so good. I am not sure if I should talk about this or not, because it is so fresh and I haven't validated it very much, because it literally came up last night when I couldn't sleep.
Cutting edge, people. This is cutting edge. Just do it, Kayelee. Just do it.
So, you've probably heard me talk about White Moon Selene before. Another point that in astrology has gotten conflated with what I call the Eve point, but White Moon Selene is actually a hypothetical second moon of the Earth and is used primarily in Russian astrological tradition. But when I was doing my research interviews and talking with a lot of women about their Eve point and their Black Moon Lilith, I was also talking to them about where their White Moon Selene was showing up without telling them what I was doing. I was just asking them questions that were relevant to their White Moon Selene placement so that I could understand, okay, what is White Moon Selene doing? Because she feels important, but it's a different kind of importance from the feminine power line. And what has come forward is that White Moon Selene, where she is in your chart, gives you information about how you relate to the concept of the divine feminine, how you relate to the mother goddess, whether you're open to that concept and whether you're not, and like how that's colored for you. And looking at that has been really powerful for me personally. And as I've started doing it more and more with clients, it is a valuable point for beginning to do that work of not necessarily reclaiming your own internal feminine, but fostering this relationship with a cosmic feminine, with something bigger than yourself as a model for what feminine energy is. And whether you call that Heavenly Mother, Goddess, the Mother God, something else entirely, it doesn't matter so much as the concept of there is a something out there bigger than me that is feminine energy. And as I've had all this stuff coming up around like masculine energy and men, and what if there's a masculine power line? Last night, as I was feeding my baby, I was sitting in my chair, nursing him, and I was doing some research on White Moon Selene some more, because I was like, there's something here besides, like, there's more. And it just suddenly hit me like, oh, if there's a White Moon Selene that connects us to this concept of feminine deity or divine feminine or feminine cosmic principle, is there something in the chart that does the same thing for the masculine cosmic principle, for the Father God, for a true and real representation of what cosmic masculine energy is? And that was like, oh, wow. I had to take a few breaths when that hit, like, oh my gosh, if there's something like that in the chart, that's a big deal. That's a really big deal, especially in cases of like religious trauma or religious deconstruction. How can you relate to the concept of a father God if all you've known is a punitive father God or an absent father God? And so I did some more research and some more feeling into things. And this morning, when I was supposed to be getting ready for this podcast recording, I was doing more research instead of getting in the shower. And then I had to rush my shower because I was running out of time. But I was so excited. So in the mythology of Selene, there was an aspect of Selene that was called Mene. Mene was related to the timing principle of the moon, of like months. And Selene in mythology, she mothered, I can't remember how many, but a lot of daughters by Endymion, who was a shepherd that she loved dearly, to the point that she basically froze him in time, and he was perpetually young and asleep and beautiful and perfect. And she mothered all these children, conceived all these children with him not fully aware and present. And so this is a shadow manifestation of Selene, this idea of like, oh, how are we freezing that relationship with the feminine as a cosmic principle? How are we trying to make it perfect but not actually touch it and live it? But as I was leaning into that and came across, oh, like their daughters were called the Menoi. And oh wait, Mene is another name for Selene that has to do with timing, that has to do with integrity and boundaries. And then I went further, and I already knew this, but it never hit as hard as it did this morning, that there were Proto-Indo-European lunar gods. So the moon had a masculine principle. There was Menot, which was the original Proto-Indo-European moon deity. He was male, Menot. And Mani in Norse mythology, and I may be pronouncing that incorrectly, but in Norse mythology, men in Anatolian traditions, actually a moon god named Men. And Mani in Norse mythology was a lunar deity and male. And I saw all these connections between, oh, is there a male lunar principle? And what does it connect to? Well, it connects to timing, and it connects to this, hey, you don't have all the answers and you're standing in the dark, but I'm here and I'm protecting you. And here are these things that are going to support you in the process of taking your journey into the dark. And I was like, what? This is also perfect. So this is fresh. I have not validated this in any way, shape, or form except research and archetype and how it feels in my own body. But I'm really, really excited to see where this goes, because even looking at my own chart and looking at my husband's chart just really quickly, it plays out. It plays out. It really does, right?
It's so exciting. It's so exciting. I'm like, now look at my chart and tell me how it plays out.
And I forgot something very important. So I told you about this, okay, Selene and Mene, like they're both aspects of the moon, but I didn't tell you like, oh, White Moon Selene is in the chart somewhere, but where the heck is Mene? Where's Mene? And since I have this axis of the feminine power line and this axis of the masculine power line, it made sense to me to have an axis of the cosmic masculine and feminine. And so I'm tentatively putting Mene as 180 degrees away from White Moon Selene. So they both have approximately 7-year cycles of going through the entire zodiac. And there's just so much symbolism and so much beauty there. And I'm like, okay, let's not run too fast, Kayelee. We got to validate things in people's actual charts besides just yours and your husband's. But it feels very promising. So that's what's super real and super alive for me right now. So much so that my hair is still wet because I put off showering so that I could research some more this morning.
This is amazing. I love hearing this. I'm sure everyone listening is incredibly intrigued by this. And if you're feeling a little lost, again, there is a ton more resources, and you can always go to Kayelee herself and get some. She will help you with your chart and is very good during sessions. But I love these ideas. I love that how they're coming to you. I love these floods of inspiration that you're getting. I'm so excited to look at it in my own chart and be like, oh, I see that. It's so funny because I love the idea. This is how I feel about the masculine principle so many times, is like exactly what you said. I'm going to catch you when you go into the dark. I'll be there. Just jump and I'll be there. Because the feminine is very much like, I'm going to jump, like I'm here free falling. And the masculine's here to be like, okay, I'll catch you. I'll create a net for you. I'm here, when you won't hit the bottom. I'm going to hold you in this. So I really love this concept coming through. But ladies and gentlemen, this is not all. If you couldn't get enough, this is not all. We have one more piece we need to explore. So let's talk about Chariklo.
All right. So this part of my research has been going on for longer. It's not from just the past few months or from last night. It's from more like last year or the year before. And Chiron in astrology is sometimes seen as like a Christ figure, as the archetypal Christ, the archetypal wounded healer. And Chiron has a counterpart in mythology, but also out in physical space. And her name is Chariklo. And in mythology, Chariklo was Chiron's wife, and she cared for him when he was wounded. So Chiron could heal basically anything, but then he was wounded and he couldn't heal himself. And it was excruciatingly painful, so much so that eventually he gave up his immortality to be put in the stars to no longer feel the pain. But while he was still living in the stars, Chariklo made his life beautiful and bearable by holding space for him and making it possible for him to do the work that he was there to do. And as Chiron kind of mirrors this Christ archetype, Chariklo mirrors this Mary Magdalene archetype. And as I have been looking more into Mary Magdalene and looking more into Chariklo in people's charts, I'm seeing that. I'm seeing this witnessing feminine. I'm seeing this feminine that is connected to the divine and the earth is the divine, as well as the transcendent is the divine, and that the feminine has a connection to it of her own accord, not just because she's connected to the masculine. And I'm excited to be even bringing this up here and now with Julie, because she knows so much more about Mary Magdalene and the traditions around Mary Magdalene than I do. That's a newer area of research for me. But Chariklo in the chart is showing up again and again as very similar to that Mary Magdalene archetype. So, Julie, will you tell us why that matters? Why does this matter?
Well, I guess we have to start it with, I know there are many people who may not believe that Christ was married on the earth and all of those kinds of things. I, for one, do believe that. But if that's offensive to you, I'm very sorry, but that's how we roll here. But if we take this as archetypes, Mary Magdalene has been held as like the feminine Christ archetype, right? Just as we've been talking about people having counterparts. The idea is that Christ also has a counterpart in Mary Magdalene. And I would say, if you want to look at this even biblically, Mary Magdalene is always the first woman that is named in the scriptures, even before Mary the mother. Whenever they name all the women and talk about certain women, it's always Mary Magdalene first. And if you look at Mary Magdalene's name, that name, everyone's like, oh, it's Mary of Magdala. That's not true. Magdala, which is supposedly this fishing city, did not exist for like 300 years until like 300 years later after Christ. So it's not Mary of Magdala, it's Mary the Magdal, which translates to the tower. She's married the tower. And then Magdalene or Magdala means someone who's very important. So she's the tower, the woman who is very important, the one who remains. And Christ several times talks about how when everyone goes away, she will remain because she is the tower. So there's tons of feminine symbolism to this. If you want to learn more, please go to our fairy tale episode. We talked a lot about this. We also talked with my dear friend Mandy Green, who is an expert on Mary Magdalene. That's what she is doing. All her master's research at Duke is based on that. We have an episode called Cutting the Wings of the Divine Feminine with, it's an extra episode, a bonus episode with Mandy that is on, and I'm sure we'll have to have Mandy back to have more of this conversation about Chariklo. But the idea is that there has to be a masculine and a feminine for us to ascend together. We worked together. And so Chariklo, or Mary Magdalene, she holds that other piece. So in Mary Magdalene lore, Mary is pregnant when Jesus dies. So she has, sometimes there are 3 children, sometimes there are 5 children, but there's a lot of lore around her in France and in England that after Christ died, she went to France and she went to England. And a lot of this makes sense when you know more about the Druids and their footprint. I don't know. Should I get into this? Do you want me to get into this deeper? We need to do a Druid episode about it because I have some updates in this realm, big time. But Mary Magdalene in the lore supposedly comes from the Druids. She supposedly comes from the Celtic region, which is why when you find her in art, like Da Vinci paints her this way, she's always painted with red hair. And that is a signification that she comes from the Celtic Isles, which is very important because if we talk about like the mystical lore of Christ, those 30 years that are missing from the Bible that we really don't know very much about him, the lost years, as they're called. There's a lot of speculation and there's a lot of other countries and places that claim that Christ visited them and that he was taught by their teachers. India is one of those. They have a name for him. When I visited India, people would tell me this all the time. Jesus was here. They call him Isha. They would talk about Isha as there, talk about Christ going to England. And if you talk to people in the UK, they will tell you Christ is an Englishman. You can see that even in books and popular culture, they will talk about that Christ is an Englishman. There's also, of course, we know he was in Egypt. And so the idea is that Christ was taught by these master teachers his whole life, that he was taught by those masterful in their craft and these mystery schools. And one of the mystery schools, one of the biggest during this time, it was the Druid Mystery School. And the biggest hub of the Druid Mystery School was in Britain, right where we have a lot of the lore around Christ. That's where we had the Sacred Grove. That's what it's called. The Sacred Grove was the place where the Druids would meet. The trees were very sacred to them. And that's supposedly how he and Mary Magdalene came together, and that the two of them were equal halves with each other, and that she was able to support his ministry and make his hold space for his wounding. She's also the woman who is the one who anointed him before he died, because in Egyptian rites, the queen always anoints the king. And so she is there to choose the king, to anoint him. She is the throne. And so Chariklo is playing this Mary Magdalene role in supporting. And that's really important to Chiron, because Chiron is our greatest wounds, but also our greatest treasures and our healing power and our teaching power and our mastering that. And Mary Magdalene, or Chariklo, is holding that space for making that possible. So I would love to hear more about what your thoughts are around this, Kayelee, and how this comes together in your research.
Yeah. So in people's personal natal charts, Chiron can definitely show up as that core wound. This is the place where I hurt the most. This is the place where if I identify with the pain and think it means something about me, I feel worthless or alienated or what have you. And if I don't identify with it and I just recognize it as a master teacher for me, then I can step into being a master mentor myself. And Chariklo in a person's natal chart, it's like if you're struggling with your Chiron placement, go to your Chariklo placement and lean into that energy, because that's the energy of holding space for that wound in a way that isn't trying to fix it. It's witnessing it and making it both beautiful and bearable to be in it and with it. And it's still fresh. I'm still exploring exactly how Chariklo shows up in people's charts. And I haven't even begun to explore how she shows up in transits and things like that. But there is definitely this evidence there of if you are needing some extra support, Chariklo is a great place to look for how you can support yourself and where you can turn to other people for that support. In a more shadow-y way, that point can show up as a place where you are a little more inclined to give until you have nothing left. Kind of similar to how Vesta can show up, but it's a little different in that it's less devotional and more personal, if that makes sense.
I was thinking a lot of this point as like the Black Madonna, because Mary Magdalene is the Black Madonna, the hidden form, right? Like your hidden, maybe even like your hidden gifts as a wisdom teacher, because Mary Magdalene was such a teacher, and your hidden gifts as a healer, things that are harder for you to see as well, that if you leaned into them, that would make flow happen. So I'm thinking about that also. And for people who don't know what a Black Madonna is, it's a statue of Mary, and it's really supposed to be Mary Magdalene. It's a statue of her in black, because during the Crusades and the time when the Catholic Church was at its strongest power, they really attacked the Church of Mary and John and attacked this idea of Mary Magdalene being sacred. And that's part of the reason she becomes a quote unquote prostitute and all of those kinds of things that we say about her. And so to hide her, to show that they were carving Mary Magdalene, they would make the rock black, that she's hidden. She's the Black Madonna. And so she's that hidden part.
And if you're listening to this and wondering like, okay, Chariklo, how do I find that? How am I going to find that in my chart? A lot of the points that I've talked about today are going to be very difficult. Well, not very difficult. Are going to be a little challenging for you to find in your chart. But if you go to astro.com, the AstroDance website, they do have a place where you can put in minor planet catalog numbers, is what they're called. And you can look up asteroids and other bodies as well. But Chariklo, her catalog number is 10199. So if you put that in there on the additional points, it's like clear down at the bottom on the extended calculations page for astro.com, you can pull up your Chariklo. It looks like Chariklo, like it's spelled Chariklo, if that helps. And actually, there are some other minor planet catalog numbers or codes for some of the points that I talked about today. And I'll go ahead and just prep those to go in the show notes. So if people want to be able to find theirs and don't want to have to schedule a session with me or something, at the very least, you can find those points in your own chart.
Beautiful. And that being said, I think this is like a good little spot we can wrap up. If you want to learn more about this is something that Kayelee deeply specializes in. Actually, she's the only person in the world who does it.
I am a category of one.
Category of one. Yes, I can talk a little bit about the feminine power line and a little bit about the asteroid goddesses, but if you really want to go deep, you need to go to the source herself, Kayelee Rose. So, Kayelee, how do people work with you?
So you can go to resonantastrology.com. We'll put that in the show notes to get in contact with me. You can also email me at kayelee@resonantastrology.com. Make sure you use all three of the E's that are in my name. It throws people off. Kayelee. And I have a surprise. 2 surprises, actually. So one of those is that I recently released a free guide for the feminine power line so that you can actually start working with your own feminine power line, including finding it and what it means depending on where it is. And you can get a hold of that guide at guide.resonantastrology.com. The other surprise is that I am only roughly a month away from releasing a self-paced course on the feminine power line where you can work with your feminine power line, not just mentally, not just with your head, but in your own body, because that's what this is about. Like I'm all about combining the mind and the body, the spirit and the body, the soul, all of it together because it's all important. So that's not yet available, but if you want to know when that releases, you can email me, or if you go to the guide.resonantastrology.com, there's a place to put in your email and you'll definitely get an email announcement that way. So yeah, those are my surprises.
There's another surprise that you forgot.
What did I forget?
You have a Substack.
Oh yeah, I have a Substack. Thanks, Julie. I have had so many surprises myself just the past couple of months of things that I'm creating or felt like I need to do. So yes, I have a Substack now. It's called Uncharted. And I write about my research and I write about the feminine power line, and the stuff that I talked about today will be showing up on Substack eventually because I can only write so much with my little baby and my 6 other children and homeschooling and all the other things. But that is a place where I do plan on sharing my research as it happens. So if you want to experience this episode of cutting edge, this is what's happening more often, my Substack is the place to go.
Yes, it's so exciting. I am your biggest fan. You know, I guess me and Lige probably fight about that. Who's the biggest fan? But I love everything that you put out, all of the, courses, articles, and everyone just go to Kayelee for sessions. She's amazing. She is so good at taking you deep and through it and just coming up with all these wise insights. You're like, wow, that's so wise. That's so deep. I never would have thought of that. Thank you. She's so good at that. So everyone visit Kayelee. This has been spectacular.
It's been so fun.
I'm so excited to talk. We have like 5 more conversations we have to have about this. So
for real, seriously. I'm like trying to take notes so that I remember all the things that we need to talk about.
All the things we have to talk about. But if you enjoyed this, please go visit Kayelee and let us know in the comments and reviews. But also, Kayelee, what would you like to leave us with? How should we sign out today?
Just so much love. That's all I have left right now. It's just so much love for all of you as our listeners. I mean, it's so fun to do this podcast just to hang out with Julie and Jayanne. But knowing that there are people listening who actually care about what we have to say and that it's having a significant impact on them, that means a lot. It makes it so we keep showing up and showing up fully and sometimes really raw, but here. And so I have so much love for you as our listeners. Just so much love and appreciation.
That's perfect. We love you too, Kayelee. Thank you everyone for hanging out, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.